Good evening. Welcome to Bible Hour, or the Bible Hour. Good evening, Park End admin. First here. Oh. Uh-oh. I've got autofocus on. Oh dear. Right, how does this get adjusted without me doing anything too dangerous? Open that, and that's going to tell me that it can't open because it's being used by something else. Yes, camera not available. Yeah. Autofocus is off. It's not off, is it? It's not off. Oh well. Good evening, Neil Whittington. Good evening, Sam Whittington. Good evening, Diane Robbins. Good evening, Petit Bois. Already the lighting has changed automatically and the camera is on autofocus. Or is it? Who knows? Who cares? Good evening, Chris Henry. I chose the most camera-friendly top in terms of lighting that I could, just for you. Good evening, Phil Tamlin. Welcome to the Bible Hour. All right. That's it. We are reading the Word of God for 1 hour, and we are at 1 Samuel chapter 18. You have a couple of minutes to get there. 1 Samuel chapter 18. It is not the Sabbath day, but it is the Lord's day, and I hope you've had a good Lord's day. It is windy outside in South Wales. We have run a program at 6 p.m. tonight on the book of Ruth, which came forth from the Bible Hour. So that's up on the YouTube channel. We've also dialogued with people that perhaps don't think that the Old Testament church was a church, and that is in the dialogue comments under the Facebook advert for the 6 p.m. program. And now we are here again, 9 p.m. What translation did you use at 6? Probably the New International Version. Probably. Good evening. Who are you? Modric. I am. Who was their really good left back in the 90s? I'm the good left back in the 90s. For the rest of you, welcome to the Bible Hour. It's day 36 where we clear the clutter of evangelical nonsense out of the way, and what we put on the table before everyone here is, what do we learn about Jesus and what do we learn about church? And that is the heart of evangelicalism. And good evening, Sue Roberts. And we have made it to 1 Samuel chapter 18, and church is in the thick of it. And David has been anointed, and Saul has been anointed, but the Spirit has left him. And now David has just come into the company of Saul. Good morning, North Star. So here, hold on. Yo, what's up, Cara? Hope you've had a good day. Okay, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Saul becomes jealous of David. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, an appointment that was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the snake serpenty Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song. Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s. This made Saul very angry. What's this? He said. They credit David with 10,000s and me only thousands. Next, they'll be making him their king. So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. Does the Bible Hour? Hey, Peter Davey, welcome. Does anyone in the Bible Hour have a jealous eye on someone? It's not good. We're to be humble and love people as ourselves. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall. But David escaped him twice. Saul was then afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away and appointed him commander over 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops into battle. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for the Lord was with him. When Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading his troops into battle. David marries Saul's daughter. One day, Saul said to David, I am ready to give you my older daughter, Merab, as your wife. But first, you must prove yourself to be a real warrior by fighting the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, I'll send him out against the Philistines and let them kill him rather than me doing it myself. Who am I, and what is my family in Israel that I should be the king's son-in-law? David exclaimed. My father's family is nothing. So when the time came for Saul to give his daughter Merab in marriage to David, he gave her instead to Adriel, a man from Meholah. In the meantime, Saul's daughter Michal had fallen in love with David, and Saul was delighted when he heard about it. Here's another chance to see him killed by the Philistines, Saul said to himself. But to David, he said, today you have a second chance to become my son-in-law. David is very humble. Yes, very Jesus-esque. Of course, Jesus' most famous sort of description of himself is Son of Man. A statement of humility there. Then Saul told his men to say to David, the king really likes you, and so do we. Why don't you accept the king's offer and become his son-in-law? When Saul's men said these things to David, he replied, how can a poor man from a humble family afford the bride price for the daughter of a king? When Saul's men reported this back to the king, he told them, tell David that all I want for the bride price is 1,000 Philistine foreskins. Vengeance on my enemies is all I really want. But what Saul had in mind was that David will be killed in the fight. David was delighted to accept the offer. Before the time expired, he and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. Then David fulfilled the king's requirement by presenting all their foreskins to him. So Saul gave his daughter Michal to David to be his wife. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and how much his daughter Michal loved him, Saul became even more afraid of him, and he remained David's enemy for the rest of his life. Every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all the rest of Saul's officers. So David became very famous. 1 Samuel chapter 19. Saul tries to kill David. Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. But Jonathan, because of his strong affection for David, told him what his father was planning. Tomorrow morning, he warned him, you must find a hiding place out in the fields. I'll ask my father to go out there with me, and I'll talk to him about you. Then I'll tell you everything I can find out. The next book, it's almost like church. Do you find this? Church bonds are often thicker than family bonds. In that sense, water is thicker than blood. The waters of baptism, the crossing of the Jordan together for true church family, I think is a closer bond than even blood family can be. The next morning, Jonathan spoke with his father about David, saying many good things about him. The king must not sin against his servant David, Jonathan said. He's never done anything to harm you. He has always helped you in every way he could. Have you forgotten about the time he risked his life to kill the Philistine giant and how the Lord brought a great victory to all Israel as a result? You were certainly happy about it then. Why should you murder an innocent man like David? There is no reason for it at all. So Saul listened to Jonathan and vowed, as surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed. Afterward, Jonathan called David and told him what had happened. Then he brought David to Saul, and David served in the court as before. War broke out after that, and David led his troops against the Philistines. He attacked them with such fury that they all ran away. But one day, when Saul was sitting at home with a spear in hand, the tormenting spirit from the Lord suddenly came upon him again. As David played his harp, Saul hurled his spirit at David. Start again. As David played his harp, Saul hurled his spear at David. But David dodged out of the way, and leaving the spear stuck in the wall, he fled and escaped into the night. Michal saves David's life. Why was the Lord sending a tormenting spirit? Well, if we reverse a bit, it was around the time of Saul's hot-headed disobedience and rebellion that this sort of the work of the spirit left him, and he's fallen under judgment now on whatever this tormenting spirit is, which is a subject in and of itself. It's part and parcel of this judgment as a result of Saul rejecting the Lord. And of course, Saul is feeding this by allowing this jealous rage and plotting and murder. So this is like part and parcel of that whole world that he's now entered. I think Dale Ralph Davis has written quite a lot on what this tormenting spirit is. If you want to get his book on 1 Samuel. Then Saul sent troops to watch David's house. They were told to kill David, and when he came out the next morning, but Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't escape tonight, you will be dead by morning." So she helped him climb out through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then she took an idol and put it in his bed, covered it with blankets, and put a cushion of goat's hair at its head. When the troops came to arrest David, she told them that he was sick and couldn't get out of bed. But Saul sent the troops back to get David. He ordered, "Bring him to me in his bed so I can kill him." But when they came to carry David out, they discovered that it was only an idol in the bed with a cushion of goat's hair at its head. "Why have you betrayed me like this and let my enemies escape?" Saul demanded of Michal. "I had to," Michal replied. "He threatened to kill me if I didn't help him." So David escaped and went to Ramah to see Samuel, and he told him all that Saul had done to him. Then Samuel took David with him to live at Naioth. When the report reached Saul that David was at Naioth in Ramah, he sent troops to capture him. But when they arrived and saw Samuel leading a group of prophets who were prophesying, the Spirit of God came upon Saul's men, and they also began to prophesy. When Saul heard what had happened, he sent other troops, but they too prophesied. The same thing happened a third time. Finally, Saul himself went to Ramah and arrived at the great well in Seku. "Where are Samuel and David?" he demanded. "They are at Naioth in Ramah," someone told him. But on the way to Naioth in Ramah, the Spirit of God came even upon Saul, and he too began to prophesy all the way to Naioth. He tore off his clothes and lay naked all day and all night, prophesying in the presence of Samuel. The people who were watching exclaimed, "What? Is even Saul a prophet?" Hey, Pete Hawley is here. Pete Hawley in the house. Petit Bois. See also Romans chapter 1, where basically there is a line society can cross with the Lord, and he'll withdraw, and just chaos then ensues, and he gives them over to themselves. I think Saul is in that category. It's just like the land of judgment now. I think there is a line that we can cross with the Lord where he falls silent for the very last time. It's quite a dangerous thing to wish the Lord away, because eventually he does give people that wish. 1 Samuel chapter 20. Jonathan helps David. David now fled from Naioth in Ramah and found Jonathan. "What have I done?" he exclaimed. "What is my crime? How have I offended your father that he is so determined to kill me?" "That's not true," Jonathan protested. "You're not going to die. He always tells me everything he's going to do, even the little things. I know my father wouldn't hide something like this from me. It just isn't so." Then David took an oath before Jonathan and said, "Your father knows perfectly well about our friendship, so he has said to himself, 'I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him?' But I swear to you that I am only a step away from death. I swear it by the Lord and by your own soul." "Tell me, what can I do to help you?" Jonathan exclaimed. David replied, "Tomorrow we celebrate the new moon festival. I've always eaten with the king on this occasion, but tomorrow I'll hide in the field and stay there until the evening of the third day. If your father asks where I am, tell him I asked permission to go home to Bethlehem for an annual family sacrifice. If he says, 'Fine,' you will know all is well. But if he is angry and loses his temper, you will know he is determined to kill me. Show me this loyalty as my sworn friend, for we made a solemn pact before the Lord, or kill me yourself if I have sinned against your father. But please don't betray me to him. Church water is thicker than family blood." "Never," Jonathan exclaimed. "You know that if I had the slightest notion my father was planning to kill you, I would tell you at once." Then David asked, "How will I know whether or not your father is angry?" "Come out to the field with me," Jonathan replied. And they went out there together. Then Jonathan told David, "I promise by the Lord, the God of Israel, that by this time tomorrow or the next day at the latest, I will talk to my father and let you know at once how he feels about you. If he speaks favorably about you, I will let you know. But if he is angry and wants you killed, may the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you so you can escape alive. May the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father. And may you treat me with the faithful love of the Lord as long as I live. But if I die, treat my family with this faithful love, even when the Lord destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth." Gotta love a friendship like that. So Jonathan made a solemn pact with David, saying, "May the Lord destroy all your enemies." And Jonathan made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again, for Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said, "Tomorrow we will celebrate the new moon festival. You will be missed when your place when your place at the table is empty." What a friend we have in Jesus. That is it. That is it. Isn't Jonathan just like Jesus to David? 1 Liam W. Nice. Then Jonathan said, "Tomorrow we celebrate the new moon." Oh, oops. Verse 19. "The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid before and wait there by the stone pile. I will come out and shoot 3 arrows to the side of the stone pile as though I were shooting a target. Then I will send a boy to bring the arrows back. If you hear me tell him, 'They're on this side,' then you will know as surely as the Lord lives that all is well and there is no trouble. But if I tell him, 'Go farther, the arrows are still ahead of you,' then it will mean that you must leave immediately, for the Lord is sending you away. And may the Lord make us keep our promises to each other, for he has witnessed them. Tell you what speaks to me about church life in this. Like as a leader, like as a church leader, Saul has become so unapproachable and angry and hot-headed and timid and evil and murderous and jealous. Like Jonathan can't even have a conversation with him anymore. Like church leaders need to be approachable and almost transparent where they've been at fault and then can talk things through with people. But these guys have to develop their own little secret code because they just can't talk things out with Saul anymore. Aren't the Lord's ways just pure and straightforward? Everything's above board. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. And may the Lord keep us our promises to each other, for he has witnessed them. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon festival began, the king sat down to eat. He sat at his usual place against the wall, with Jonathan sitting opposite him and Abner beside him. But David's place was empty. Saul didn't say anything about it that day, for he said to himself, something must have made David ceremonially unclean. Bible Hour know all about the ceremonially unclean stuff. If you want to know about the Leviticus clean and unclean feasts and rules and rituals, and go back to the Bible Hour, we've almost got a running commentary on that stuff. It's all on YouTube. But when David's place was empty again the next day, Saul asked Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse been here for the meal either yesterday or today? Jonathan replied, David earnestly asked me if he could go to Bethlehem. He said, please let me go, for we are having a family sacrifice. My brother demanded that I be there, so please let me get away to see my brothers. That's why he isn't here at the king's table. Saul boiled with rage at Jonathan. You stupid son of a whore, he swore at him. Do you think I don't know that you want him to be king in your place, shaming yourself and your mother? Could the Parker Namin put the King James Version up to see how they describe son of a whore in verse 30? Please. As long as that son of Jesse is alive, you'll never be king. Now go and get him so I can kill him. But why should he be put to death? Jonathan asked his father. What has he done? Doesn't jealousy just completely make you crazy? Like, what has he done? Nothing. But Saul's convinced he needs to die. All because those women sang a song about him which had slightly more favorable lyrics to Saul. Then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. So at last, Jonathan realized that his father was really determined to kill David. Jonathan left the table in fierce anger and refused to eat on that second day of the festival, for he was crushed by his father's shameful behavior towards David. The next morning, as agreed, Jonathan went out into the field and took a young boy with him to gather his arrows. Start running, he told the boy, so you can find the arrows as I shoot them. So the boy ran, and Jonathan shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy had almost reached the arrow, Jonathan shouted, the arrow is still ahead of you. Hurry, hurry, don't wait. So the boy quickly gathered up the arrows and ran back to his master. He, of course, suspecting nothing. Only Jonathan and David understood the signal. Then Jonathan gave his bow and arrows to the boy and told him to take them back to town. As soon as the boy was gone, David came out from where he had been hiding near the stone pile. Then David bowed 3 times to Jonathan with his face to the ground. Both of them were in tears as they embraced each other and said goodbye, especially David. Parker Admin. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan and said to him, you son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse, to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? At last, Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for we have sworn loyalty to each other in the Lord's name. The Lord is the witness of a bond between us and our children forever. Then David left, and Jonathan returned to the town. It's often a feature in church prayer meetings to pray for people who have joined the church, baptized members, loving Jesus, plugging into local church, and who are having a hard time because of it in their home life, with friends or family who are just against it. And we pray, and we must pray more for such people, that they would have bonds with church people with like kingdom power in it and pure delights in amongst that bond. Massive parts. It happens today. I don't know if you ever read Open Doors and just the martyrs in other countries who are standing for Christ in their own families and being killed for it. We are at the halfway point. Take 30 seconds. Grab a drink. Grab an apple. Grab a carrot. Grab whatever you want. You've got 30 seconds to shuffle in your seats as we hit the home straight. Liam, is it you? Ely Liam. In chat today. Yeah, there are tons of opinions and commentaries and articles and books written on the tormenting spirit. Hey, William Christofides, nice one. Legend. Yeah, I haven't spoken to you for years. Glory. That's made my day, that has. Oh, I see now. It's not Liam, is it? It's William, but you've mixed it up a bit. Anyway, on that tormenting spirit thing, and you know, the Lord does send evil to people. I think I can frame it like that. I think the King James even calls it evil spirits in Isaiah that the Lord sometimes sends to do his will. It's incredible stuff. It really enhances your view of the Lord God. 1 Samuel chapter 21. David runs from Saul. David went to the town of Nob to see Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he saw him. Why are you alone? He asked. Why is no one with you? The king has sent me on a private matter, David said. He told me not to tell anyone why I'm here. I have told my men where to meet me later. Now, what is there to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else you have. We don't have any regular bread, the priest replied, but there is holy bread, which you can have if your young men have not slept with any women recently. Don't worry, David replied. I never allow my men to be with women when we are on a campaign. And since they stay clean even on ordinary trips, how much more on this one? Since there was no other food available, the priest gave him the holy bread, the bread of the presence that was placed before the Lord in the tabernacle. It had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. That's fascinating. Of course, some of you will know that Jesus picks up on that. We're in here into a really important teaching about like the law of highest value. Because in the Bible, you'll find sometimes one commandment is broken so that others are upheld. And the one that's broken is broken in the correct spirit, in the of the way the law was given in the first place, for the good of people and to honor and glory God. And there's a few instances when this happens, and we've touched on a few. Rahab lied about having the spies and which direction they went in, but she's counted as righteous. The high priest Aaron, who was meant to do his priestly duties, didn't do them the day his sons Nadab and Abihu died in Leviticus. And he broke the law because he didn't do his priestly duties. But he didn't do it because he was grieving. And those priestly duties had to be done with the spirit of joy. So he was allowed to break one law in order to uphold the others. Here, David does it. For the survival of himself and the lineage of Jesus, he's just eaten the temple bread. But he's not condemned for it. In 2 Chronicles chapter 30, where they have just discovered the Bible in Israel for the first time in years, they're all convicted and they throw a festival. They throw a big party. But they throw the party at the wrong time of year that it's supposed to be. They break that law. But they're honored because their spirit is right. They want to honor the Lord. Why is lying bad? Lying's bad when we're trying to be evil and get ourselves over other people in an evil way. Do you see the spirit of these laws? The Lord's laws are good. And sometimes we might have to break one to uphold the goodness and the spirit of the entire law. I'll end this little bit on this because it is important and it does matter to how we live daily lives. In theological college, we were like saying examples about this, like this. What if I promised Petit Bois that I would be at his house tomorrow at 2:00? I promise you. On the way to Petit Bois' house, now as a Christian, I've given my word, and we're to honor our word and not lie, as the 10 Commandments say. But on the way to Petit Bois' house, I'm driving down I'm going over Caerphilly Mountain, and I see a car accident and a woman and child in need, and I have to attend them. Well, I've now got to weigh something up. If I help this family, I will break my word to Petit Bois. Now, so what do? There are very few people that would carry on going to Petit Bois' house for a cup of tea instead of helping the family. And therefore, I break the law and I've told a lie. But I'm upholding other commandments. Now, why have we paused there as David eats the showbread? Because this is a linchpin that Jesus holds. His whole basically is he brings down the Pharisaic attitude. With that, religious people hold the laws to make themselves look amazing, and it's nothing to do with the right spirit and loving Jesus. So the Bible hour, we've got to be Christians in spirit, loving the law and upholding it, but in real ways, honoring Jesus at every point. I took a bit of time there because that's an important point, the law of highest value, or whatever I called it at the start of that. Verse 7. Now Doeg, the Edomite, Saul's chief herdsman, was there that day, having been detained before the Lord. Hey, Petty Bar, if you do ever want me to come around for a cup of tea, I would try and get there for 2 o'clock. But not in lockdown. Having been detained before the Lord. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or a sword?" The king's business was so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon. I just thought of something else. And this, I'm going to hit a nerve here, but I've seen it so much. There are so many people in that I've seen growing up, and they're usually men who think it's right and honorable to go to each and every church meeting that's on. And sometimes their wives have needed them at home. And I don't always think it's in the spirit of Christianity to always be at church when family and friends might need us at home. And I've seen that loads. I don't know. I'm new to Park Ends, but I don't know what the hunger is for church attendance. But in some churches I've been at, the men are always there. And it's like, I think, your wife's ill and your kids are ill. You better get back there. I think that's the more Jesus thing to do. Do you see how applicable this David eating the showbread on the table of presence is? Like non-Christians do it all the time. Like how many widows have there been because of Ninian Park, where wives have lost their husbands to the football and that is their life. Mates, pubs, football, bit of wife on the side every now and then. But there's a sneaky way of it happening in church, and it's the righteous ones always in church meetings where their family life is just going to pot. I think all of that is why David is not struck dead for eating this bread. Verse 8, Gulf widows, Perry, but there you go. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a sword or a spear?" The king's business was so urgent that I didn't have time to grab a weapon. I only have the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah. The priest replied, "It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take it if you want, for there is nothing else here." "There is nothing like it," David replied. "Give it to me." So David escaped from Saul and went to King Achish of Gath. But the officers of Achish were unhappy about his being there. "Isn't this David, the king of the land?" they asked. "Isn't he the one the people honor with dances and singing? Saul has killed thousands and David is 10,000s." David heard these comments and was very afraid of what King Achish of Gath might do to him. So he pretended to be insane, scratching on doors and drooling down his beard. Finally, King Achish said to his men, "Must you bring me a madman? We already have enough of them around here. Why should I let someone like this be my guest?" Wow. We are in the third. Take 30 seconds. We are on the closing straight, I think, of 1 Samuel. One Samuel, chapter 22. David at the cave of Adullam. Mind you, half the problem in 2020 is Christians don't go to any meetings, let alone we're having to block them from getting in. Try getting a Christian out of bed for church in the morning. That's the biggest problem at the moment. So David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. Soon his brothers and all his other relatives joined him there. Then others began coming, men who were in trouble or in debt or who were just disconnected. until David was the discontented, until David was the captain of about 400 men. Later, David went to Mizpah in Moab, where he asked the king, "Please allow my father and mother to live here with you until I know what God is going to do for me." So David's parents stayed in Moab with the king during the entire time David was living in his stronghold. One day, the prophet Gad told David, "Leave the stronghold and return to the land of Judah." So David went to the forest of Hereth. The news of his arrival in Judah soon reached Saul. At the time, the king was sitting beneath the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, holding his spear and surrounded by his officers. "Listen here, you men of Benjamin," Saul shouted to his officers when he heard the news. "Has that son of Jesse promised every one of you fields and vineyards? Has he promised to make you all generals and captains in his army? Is that why you have conspired against me? For not one of you told me when my own son made a solemn pact with the son of Jesse. You're not even sorry for me. Think of it. My own son encouraging him to kill me as he is trying to do this very day." Then Doeg, the Edomite, who was standing there with Saul's men, spoke up. "When I was at Nob," he said, "I saw the son of Jesse talking to the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub. Ahimelech consulted the Lord for him. Then he gave him food and the sword of Goliath the Philistine." How is church doing, by the way, with these kings? The slaughter of the priests. King Saul immediately sent for Ahimelech and all his family who served as priests at Nob. When they arrived, Saul shouted at him, "Listen to me, you son of Ahitub." "What is it, my king?" Ahimelech asked. "Why have you and the son of Jesse conspired against me?" Saul demanded. "Why did you give him food and a sword? Why have you consulted God for him? Why have you encouraged him to kill me, as he is trying to do this very day?" "But sir," Ahimelech replied, "is anyone among all your servants as faithful as David, your son-in-law? Why, he is the captain of your bodyguard and a highly honored member of your household." This was certainly not the first time I had consulted him. "May the king not accuse me and my family in this matter, for I knew nothing at all of any plot against you." "You will surely die, Ahimelech, along with your entire family," the king shouted. And he ordered his bodyguards, "Kill these priests of the Lord, and they are allies, for they are allies and conspirators with David. They knew he was running away from me, but they didn't tell me." But Saul's men refused to kill the Lord's priests. Then the king said to Doeg, "You do it." So Doeg, the Edomite, turned on them and killed them that day. 85 priests in all, still wearing their priestly garments. Isn't that like Saul basically hacking down Jesus himself? Those that did the study of the priesthood in Leviticus, Numbers, that is a picture, isn't it? He is waging war against Jesus himself. Then he went to Nob, the town of the priests, and killed the priests' families, men and women, children and babies, and all the cattle, donkeys, sheep, and goats. And jealousy triggered this off. Beware, nip it in the bud. Only Abiathar, one of the sons of Ahimelech, escaped and fled to David. When he told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord, David exclaimed, "I knew it. When I saw Doeg the Edomite there that day, I knew he was sure to tell Saul, now I have caused the death of all your father's family. Stay here with me and don't be afraid. I will protect you with my own life, for the same person wants to kill us both. Petty Bar, why didn't God stop the slaughter of the priests? Well, that's a small question and a big question. One quick reply is, why did Saul kill the priests? That is how the text reads. The blame is on him. The larger version of that question, Petty Bar, is, why doesn't God stop all evil immediately or from ever happening? And yeah, he does sound like Herod. You're right there, William. And that is one for the Facebook posts in the next couple of days and so. But yeah, men have a choice. I think that's been the thing with Saul. He has been to blame this whole time. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think we'll go there. No, I don't think we'll go there. No, we won't go there. Yeah, but well, okay, the priests weren't perfect either and were deserving of judgment themselves, like every single human being does. I mean, they're innocent in the terms of this event. He didn't do anything wrong, but they're not innocent, and each individual deserves to die. So the wonder is, how were they preserved that long and had the honor of being priests for the period they did? That's one way of looking at it for the adults. Babies are a different matter. That's a big one for Facebook. The other one is, if God were to stop evil, and this is the short one now because we're not getting into it, I mean, it would involve freezing all of our actions that we ever choose to do, stripping us of every free choice we ever make, and creating robots who don't live. And it gets really interesting there. Why didn't he stop the priests from dying? Why not reverse it 10 minutes? Why didn't God stop Saul from sitting under the tree holding his spear where he bumped into him? Well, okay, let's go back and further. Why didn't God stop Saul's parents from falling in love and then procreating, producing Saul? So now you have the stopping of movement for Saul to get to the tree. You get the stopping of the enjoyable dating process of Saul's parents who were to one day meet. And what happens is you reverse ad infinitum so far. Every single action of humanity is frozen dead. And that's the short version. I mean, if you want to get, we could really get into it because it is quite a big one now. 1 Samuel 23, David protects the town of Keilah. And the point all that was, I have never met an atheist, a raging God-hating atheist, that would say they would want all of those free choices stripped away as well. David protects the town of Keilah. One day news came to David that the Philistines are at Keilah stealing grain from the threshing floors. David asked the Lord, should I go and attack them? Yes, go and save Keilah, the Lord told him. But David's men said, we're afraid even here in Judah. We certainly don't want to go to Keilah to fight the whole Philistine army. So David asked the Lord again. And again the Lord replied, go down to Keilah, for I will help you conquer the Philistines. So David and his men went to Keilah. They slaughtered the Philistines and took all their livestock and rescued the people of Keilah. Now when Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, he brought the ephod with him. Saul soon learned that David was at Keilah. Good, he exclaimed. We've got him now. God has handed him over to me, for he has trapped himself in a walled town. So Saul mobilized his entire army to march to Keilah and besiege David and his men. But David learned of Saul's plan and told Abiathar the priest to bring the ephod and asked the Lord what should he do. Then David prayed, "O Lord, God of Israel, I have heard that Saul is planning to come and destroy Keilah because I am here. Will the leaders of Keilah betray me to him? And will Saul actually come as I have heard? O Lord, God of Israel, please tell me." And the Lord said, "He will come." And David asked, "Will the leaders of Keilah betray me and my men to Saul?" And the Lord replied, "Yes, they will betray you." So David and his men, about 600 of them now, left Keilah and began roaming the countryside. Word soon reached Saul that David had escaped, so he didn't go to Keilah after all. David now stayed in the strongholds of the wilderness and in the hill country of Ziph. Saul hunted him day after day, but God didn't let Saul find him. One day near Horesh, David received the news that Saul was on the way to Ziph and search for him and kill him. Jonathan went to find David and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. Yes! "Don't be afraid," Jonathan reassured him. "My father will never find you. You are going to be king of Israel, and I will be next to you, as my father Saul is well aware." So the two of them renewed their solemn pact before the Lord. Then Jonathan returned home, while David stayed at Horesh. But now the men of Ziph went to Saul in Gibeah and betrayed David to him. "We know where David is hiding," they said. "He is in the strongholds of Horesh on the hill of Hakilah, which is in the southern part of Jeshimon. Come down whenever you're ready, O king, and we will catch him and hand him over to you." "The Lord bless you," Saul said. "At last someone is concerned about me. Go and check again and be sure of where he is staying and who has seen him there, for I know that he is very crafty. Discover his hiding places and come back when you are sure. Then I'll go with you. And if he is in the area at all, I'll track him down, even if I have to search every hiding place in Judah." So the men of Ziph returned home ahead of Saul. Meanwhile, David and his men had moved into the wilderness of Maon in the Arabah valley south of Jeshimon. When David heard that Saul and his men were searching for him, he went even farther into the wilderness to the great rock, and he remained there in the wilderness of Maon. But Saul kept after him in the wilderness. Saul and David were now on opposite sides of a mountain. Just as Saul and his men began to close in on David and his men, an urgent message reached Saul that the Philistines were raiding Israel again. So Saul quit chasing David and returned to fight the Philistines. Ever since that time, the place where David was camped has been called the Rock of Escape. David then went to live in the strongholds of En Gedi. The hatred of believers is sometimes just outright blind, manically driven to the nth degree, inexplicably so. 1 Samuel chapter 24, David spares Saul's life. After Saul returned from fighting the Philistines, he was told that David had gone into the wilderness of En Gedi. So Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. At the place where the road passes some sheepfolds, Saul went into the cave to relieve himself. But as it happened, David and his men were hiding farther back in that very cave. Now's your opportunity. David's men whispered to him, "Today the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power to do as you wish." So David crept forward and cut off a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began bothering him because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this to my lord the king. I shouldn't attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him." So David restrained his men and did not tell them to kill Saul. I think it was yesterday, possibly the day before now, we looked at governments being the Lord's anointed, whether they're Christian or not, and what our attitude should be towards them. You could dig that out. After Saul had left the cave and gone on his way, David came out and shouted after him, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked around, David bowed low before him. Then he shouted to Saul, why do you listen to the people who say I am trying to harm you? This very day you can see with your own eyes it isn't true, for the Lord placed you at my mercy back there in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you. For I said, I will never harm the king. He is the Lord's anointed one. Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It is a piece of the hem of your robe. I cut it off, but I did not kill you. This proves that I am not trying to harm you and that I have not sinned against you, even though you have been hunting for me to kill me. May the Lord judge between us. Perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you are trying to do to me, but I will never harm you. As the old proverb says, from evil people come evil deeds. So you can be sure I will never harm you. Who is the king of Israel trying to catch anyway? Should he spend his time chasing one who is as worthless as a dead dog or a single flea? May the Lord, therefore, judge which one of us is right and punish the guilty one. He is my advocate. He will rescue me from your power. Yeah, an advocate on high, representing us in heaven tonight. When David had finished speaking, Saul called back, "Is that really you, my son David?" Then he began to cry, and he said to David, "You are a better man than I am, for you have repaid me good for evil. Yes, you have been amazingly kind to me today, for when the Lord put me in a place where you could have killed me, you didn't do it. Who else would let his enemy get away when he had him in his power? May the Lord reward you well for the kindness you have shown me today. And now I realize that you are surely going to be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will flourish under your rule. Now swear to me by the Lord that when that happens, you will not kill my family and destroy my line of descendants." So David promised this to Saul with an oath. Then Saul went home, but David and his men went back to their stronghold. And I'm sure Saul became an outstanding church member, and he was truly repentant, and he did not consult to witchcraft going forward. I'm sure that doesn't happen. For now, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We have learned a ton about who should be king of church, how church bonds are closer than blood bonds, and how jealousy needs to be nipped in the bud before the Lord hands us over to all sort of satanic hatred. So let's go to bed tonight, confessed our sins, at peace, straightforward Christian people, upholding the law of the higher value, which I change the name of every time I mention it, eating the show bread, so to speak. And God willing, we will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. I have a funeral tomorrow. If you do, pray for me, or if you don't, now's your chance. Tonight, tomorrow, COVID lockdown funeral. It's my second in this trying time. Actually, don't bother praying for me. Pray for the poor widow who has only 9 guests at the funeral of her husband, and of whom no one can go home to her house after and comfort her. Really pray for her at this time. See you all tomorrow.